Hello, everyone, and welcome to Product Club. We are really glad you could join us today. I'm Lou, the community manager here at Automation Anywhere, and joining me are Vineet and Max, but I'll do a proper intro for them in just a moment. They are going to steal the show today anyway. So first, I wanted to dive into what Product Club is and what you can expect during today's session. So this is our monthly virtual meetup where we connect you directly with our product leaders to walk through what's new, what's coming, and most importantly, how you can use these innovations to drive real business impact. We take deep dives into specific capabilities, show it live, and create a space for open discussion, questions, and feedback with the people building the product. In today's example, we have Vineet. So we are excited to dive into that with you all today. Today's session is a great example because we are going to explore Universal Webhook Listener and how it unlocks real-time event-driven automation far beyond the limits of pre-built integration. You'll see how this capability allows you to respond instantly to events from virtually any SaaS application and trigger contextual automations the moment those events occur. We will also kick off our first use case of the quarter centered on a new employee onboarding scenario, which will evolve over the next 3 months as we continue to stack products into the workflow we're building. So this is a little different than we've done in the past. If you attended Pathfinder Summit, you will have been privy to our Product Club Super Session. This is following a similar structure. So we have an environment and we are building out a workflow utilizing different tools and features. So then at the end of this session, we will open things up for Q&A, but as things are being shown, feel free to submit your questions as they come to you. There is time at the end, but I can cut into these guys getting super pumped about the tech to ask them your questions. So feel free to shoot those over and I'll be like, hey guys, simmer down, I have a question. And finally, we will be launching some polls throughout this session. Please engage with those. They help us properly navigate the conversation and be in tune with what's needed in the future. I will also be pulling responses to these at the end, and I will select 3 folks to get some swag to. So there's Pathfinder swag in it for you today. Real quick though, the session is being recorded and we may make some forward-looking statements. So please base all purchasing decisions on current capabilities. Next up is Pathfinder news. We have some awesome events coming up that you won't want to miss. I'm dropping those links in the chat right now. Actually, I'm not, Max is. But on February 19th, there's a user group being led by Albertsons on scaling automation. February 24th, we are hosting a Women in Automation user group led by our MVP from Tangentia, Shrigori, alongside Shreya from our team. So if you are a woman in automation, you'll definitely want to register for this. On March 4th, we have a Pathfinder webinar dedicated to how you can become an MVP or community captain. So if that's something that interests you, be sure to check it out. It's going to be full of information. You'll hear from Chance and Mary and get all of your next steps mapped out if that's something you are interested in. And on March 11th, we will be hosting our next Product Club session on MCP Inbound. We received a ton of questions about that capability during our last innovation showcase. So we thought we'd do a deeper dive on it and give you access to the product leader to ask your questions. All right, now let's meet our speakers. First, we have Vineet Pujari. Vineet plays a key role in shaping the automation cloud service and event-driven automation capabilities within A360, including Universal Webhook Listener, which is what we're discussing today. He'll walk us through the vision behind this feature, how it works, and why it significantly expands what's possible with real-time automation. Vineet, before we kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What's your role here at Automation Anywhere?
Sure. Thank you, Lou, and welcome everyone. My name is Vineet Pujari. I belong to the product management team here. My focus is automation cloud service, which happens to be the next generation runtime environment for agentic process automation. Apart from that, I also manage event-driven automations, connectors, triggers. So anytime you want to extend or integrate automation anywhere with um, an external system via a native package, feel free to reach out to me, suggest a roadmap feature, and I'll be happy to deliver it for you.
Awesome, thanks. And Vinny, what is one real life event trigger you wish existed?
Well, yeah, every time there's some important decision that affects the stock market, I wish I get that notification first.
Yeah, I will need you to share that one with me.
Absolutely.
All right. We are also joined by Max Cassidy, Senior Developer Evangelist. Max will help ground today's discussion in a practical use case, our employee onboarding scenario, showing how webhook driven events can immediately trigger downstream automations and insights. This will serve as the foundation for our broader use case journey this quarter. Max, can you explain what exactly is a developer evangelist?
Of course I can, Lou. So first of all, thank you all for joining. So my role here within Automation Anywhere, we look at the latest and the greatest features that's coming out to the platform. We get our hands on this and we see how far we can push these. We look at the capabilities, but then after looking at the capabilities, we look at ways on how we can make these engaging, create different use cases, create content for events like Imagine, and even events like this, like the use case you're going to see today, to be able to really make sure that you both understand it, you're able to adopt it, and to make sure that the process of really getting hands-on with this within your organization is as easy as it can possibly be.
That sounds really useful. And so I am very glad you're here. Okay, so let's switch it up. And just for fun, what's the most unexpected automation you've ever built or seen?
Most unexpected automation is probably one that's been most useful for me, and this is going back a fair few years now. I realized that my diet consisted of the same thing every single week. I did the online shop, so it just kind of made sense to automate the entire shopping process for me. So now it was just a case of one click of the button and boom, all my shopping was done. It
Nice.
worked out very, very well, especially from somebody that does not enjoy grocery shopping.
That sounds perfect. I'm
Oh, it
gonna
was
need
good.
that one as well.
I'll send it over, Lou.
All right. And then before we get started, I do have a quick poll. I want to get this quick pulse check before moving on. So I'd love to understand how your applications generate, how are events currently generated in your systems? Okay, so that poll is live. We have webhooks, polling, message queues, change data capture, custom events via APIs, or we currently don't use events. I'm going to give about 30 seconds here. This is
And
an
you can
interesting one
select
to move us forward. Oh, yeah, sorry.
you can select as many as you like. If you have multiple like webhooks and polling, you can select more than one option.
Mhm. All right, I'm going to end the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, those results look like this. So we have 20
Well,
who don't use custom events APIs are up there, message queues. So Vineet, internalize this as we move forward because I know folks will want to hear how this is different and what the benefits are.
yeah.
Okay, and with that, Vineet, I'm going to hand the torch over to you.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you so much. Once again, welcome everybody. Welcome to Product Club. Today, we are diving into web triggers, which is the fastest way to make your automations fire the moment something happens in your apps. Right? Think of web triggers as event-driven automations with zero polling and zero waiting. So think of them like instant real-time magic. Something happens in an application, we deliver the notification right to your control room, and then you can execute a sequence of steps that you want to be done automatically. So web triggers, you connect once, you subscribe to the events that you care about, and then our web triggers do all the heavy lifting behind the scenes. Um, so these already work with any webhook enabled app. The universal listener that we are talking about today, it works with any modern SaaS app that you can imagine. It's actually live with release 39. So if you're on cloud, you're basically ready to go. You can try it out today. Um, and you can use it to react to ticket updates, CRM changes, HR events, DevOps activities, anything in your applications that produces an event. And like I mentioned, these are real-time responsive, which means the moment events occur in your enterprise, you can take actions. You can pass the event payload as context to your automation, and then execute a series of automation steps. So Universal Web Trigger actually opens up the scope of automations that you can do by consuming more than just the supported out-of-box packages like ServiceNow, Outlook, Jira, GitHub, and others. And we have many more coming out of the box. But Universal Listener acts as sort of the catch-all, event listener. So any application that's not supported natively yet, we can still use Universal Listener to get those events, pass the event data to your automation. And what we are going to do next is Max is going to do a very cool demo to showcase how these universal listeners can help you automate things that you never imagined that you could automate in real time. You don't have to use pollers. You don't have to, engage your bot runner machines to constantly poll for events. Universal listeners simply bring the event data to your control room the moment they occur. Right? So that's the differentiator with Universal Listener. We'll also talk about a couple of use cases towards the end, but for now, I think with this context, we can move on to the next section, Lou.
Yeah, totally. I want to, before I hand it over to Max, because I do think this information will be beneficial, I'm going to launch one more poll. So launching that now, which event source systems do you most frequently work with? With Salesforce, ServiceNow, Workday, SAP, Microsoft, custom internal apps, or external partner APIs. With these, I think, Max, you'll be able to call out in your demo where there's similarities, things like that.
Definitely, definitely.
And your inputs will also help us prioritize what comes next as part of the platform.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1 and share those results. So we have Microsoft 365 and Teams taking the lead, followed by custom internal apps, external partner APIs, ServiceNow, Salesforce, and Workday. So there you go. And Max, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Just quickly before we move forward, Vineet, we do have one quick question here just from Stefan. So this feature, will this be available for on-prem too?
We have plans to roll out this feature on-prem, but not in the near future, Stefan. Thank you for asking the question. We do have a plan to release it in the next 1 year, tentatively. Yeah.
Perfect. So with that, let me jump in and I can share my screen. Okay, so everyone should now see the organization chart. Lou, Vineet, can you just give me a nod that you can see my screen?
We got it, Max.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so before I just quickly jump into everything, just a very basic outline of what it is that I'm going to be showing here. So a webhook basically is a way for one system to notify another system in real time when something happens. So for us today, it's going to be when we add a new employee to our organization. Now, a great way to actually think of a webhook is like a doorbell. You don't keep going to your front door and opening your door to see if somebody's there. You wait for somebody to ring the doorbell or knock on the door, and then you go forward and open it. So that's kind of the way that I like to see and think of how these webhooks and these triggers all work. Now, at a basic level, when we're setting up a webhook within your control room, all you need to do is you go to the manage section and then we navigate to event triggers. From here, we have our listeners part. Now, the listener URL needs to be configured. Now, I've already configured this because I've built an asset and I've put this listener URL into my Supabase. So any features or any of them technologies that you was talking about, so whether that's Teams or whether that's Slack, the listener URL is something that you'll be passing over to that. And this is what allows one to talk to the other. Now, creating the listener URL in Automation Anywhere is as simple as pressing on the Create Listener button just here, putting in a name, add a description, and then selecting Create. So I already have my URL in place, so I don't need to do anything else with this. So with that in mind, I'm going to go back over to my control room. Now in here, in order to be able to access the Universal Web Trigger Listener part, that is at the bottom underneath actions. So if we press on show on actions here, all of your triggers will be presented right here. Now, when I select on my trigger, my listener has already been created in my event triggers up here, which I showed you. So this is my listener, and I simply select the one that I have already set up. That defines the URL that has already been created for me. Now, we don't need any authentication headers, but these are used to secure the webhook. So here we can define, let's say, an API key, a bearer token, or a custom secret header if we do need to. We then also have the signature scheme. Now, again, we don't need these, but by selecting this, what happens is we generate a signature for every single request. And this is a way to confirm that once the signature leaves point A and then arrives at point B, it hasn't been tampered with or intercepted, as these will change. This signature changes on every single kind of transfer of data, which means that we know where it's at point A, and then if it's the same at point B, we know that all of that is secure. So that is just a way to really make sure that everything is as secure as it needs to be. So let me quickly go over and demo this. So I have a message box in place to show you that when I execute this, it's not just going to execute. We all know how quickly these automations run. So for this, I'm going to execute this manually by just selecting Run with Triggers. Now, what this is going to do here is this is going to be waiting until my trigger is activated within my platform. So from here, I'm just going to go back over to the organization chart for the IT platform. From here, I'm going to select on Add Employee. Now for this, I'm just going to add myself. Not going to type in everything. Select a different manager. Matt will not be happy. And then for my location, I'm just going to enter random data into here for the purpose of this. Okay, then I'm going to press on Add Employee. It's not saved there. Now what's going to be happening now I've pressed on Add Employee is that webhook has been queued for delivery. So we can see now in our automation control room, it has now started notifying the device. And there we go, our bot is running. So that bot would have only started running once this organization has added the new employee. So a use case like this opens up the possibilities where when you do onboard a new employee, they're going to need to make sure that they're set up with all of their contacts. They're going to need to have all of their login credentials. They may need some sort of laptop being posted to them and proof of address and everything like that, which means that all of these elements of your onboarding can be automated. So that every single time you do a new employee, you don't need to execute the automation. You can simply put them into your system, and then have that send all of the necessary files straight out to that employee directly. Think of this as a way to really increase that efficiency that you can offer and just streamline all of these processes, whether it's day-to-day processes or whether it's just processes like this that can get a little bit tedious. But that does go over the use case for how it goes through and pretty much on how that can be created within Automation Anywhere and how that is all then kicked off. Now, I do see that we have a fair few questions in the chat. So, Vineet, I think a fair few of these will be good to be able to kind of both of us collaborate on and discuss.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so if we scroll down here, so let me go to the top of these questions. So, Vineet, I don't know if you have any information of this, but could you talk about how this would work with Kafka? I haven't used Kafka personally, so if you've got any experience with this.
Yeah, sure. I have some experience on Kafka. So Kafka is a messaging queue service where producers enqueue messages and consumers can subscribe to the messages that they're interested in. For example, think of a sporting website which broadcasts messages for all your football teams, and you subscribe to only one of your favorite football teams, so that you get notifications only when a news article about your favorite team arrives, right? So that's Kafka in the simplest way. How web triggers can be integrated with Kafka? Can they be integrated? Yes, for sure. How? So for every Kafka topic, I think there is a bridge service that you can have. To that bridge service, all you need to do is copy paste the URL that you generate in the control room, the listener URL, and then whenever a new topic arrives, it will automatically deliver the content to this callback URL, and then that URL will deliver the notification to your Automation Anywhere control room. So this is how you could use Universal Listener with Kafka and even other messaging queues.
Perfect. Awesome. Now, a tip regarding how this can be scheduled. When you're scheduling your automations anyway, you can just select the option to be able to schedule with these triggers. And like you saw within the demo that I posted there, we have at the very top the trigger that we have set up and configured in place. So for scheduling, it would just be a case of either running them manually like I did, or setting it up as a schedule using the event trigger that you have already configured within your automation.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we use scheduling when we are sure or when we have an idea of when the event occurs. For example, I can schedule an automation every 10 minutes or every hour or every 5 hours because I know that at that interval I can expect some new events. And scheduling basically works outbound. Like the control room makes an outbound API call to the system that produces your events, which is sort of different from what universal listeners do. They listen. They don't, like, taking the analogy that Max mentioned earlier. Scheduler peeps through the keyhole and checks if somebody has come to your home. But webhooks or universal listener, they deliver the notification in the form of a doorbell when somebody comes, and that's how you open the door.
Perfect. Now, Chris, when it comes to, so the demo, like you said, the demo here was for a single employee record getting created. And that was all because this is just the demo purposes and us executing this manually. However, for any kind of volume of records or batch processes that you're going to be working with, you would just be able to set this up as the scheduler, like you would be setting up your other automations. Now, once this is set up as a scheduler and you've got this active with your bot runner, or not a bot runner if you're using an API task, that is then just going to be listening for these to come into play. So your batches will keep getting processed as long as these requests keep coming in to the control room and as long as everything is configured correctly. And that is correct. We get the URL by creating the listener there. So once that listener is created, you then get that URL automatically generated for you to be able to use.
Hey, Max, we have a question in the Q&A. It says, it was mentioned that the UWL doesn't consume a runner. How do you choose where to direct the automation? Can the event be directed to a pool of runners?
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Go ahead,
Vineet,
Max.
after you.
Okay, thanks. So I was going to say yes, for sure. So the listening bit happens without a bot runner. When the universal listener listens to the external application and gets the event to your control room, that is when you can choose if you want to deploy the automation to a individual device or to a pool of runners, etc., or to an API task which runs on the cloud. You have that option.
Okay, let's see. Jane said, this sounds like a perfect use case for me working in HR. However, I'm not sure our current systems allow webhooks such as Track used for recruitment in NHS or Optima Health Roster for rostering shifts. Do either of you guys know anything about that? Is there a workaround, anything like that?
In terms of workarounds, and it's a case of how it fits in the organization, I think for this, it's a case of having a conversation with the automation and the IT team just to be able to work out what access you've got there. And I mean, like I was talking about with the secure authentication headers and even the security tokens that can be generated, this is levels of security that you could implement into your triggers to make sure that all of that data and all of the operations are secure. So we will be staying compliant in terms of making sure that there is no risk or anything to the current systems that you've got going on. But I think this is always going to be a case of a conversation. And likewise, if you need to use what we've gone over today, touch on kind of the security features and the aspects, we do have documents in place. But of course, you can always drop us an email and we can easily send this over to you in a form that would be able to be resonated within your organization and adapt the requirements that you may need so that this can be presented across.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jane, if you just want to shoot me a message or an email, if this is something you're interested in, we can definitely, I can work with the team and we can get you what you need.
Yeah, sometimes some applications do not support webhooks by default, but we can always explore if there's any workarounds in the form of external plugins. So these plugins allow you to still, implement the callback functionality.
And then guys, what monitors the listeners and how many listeners can people add to control rooms? Is there a limit at all?
There is no limit. You can add as many listeners as you want. Um, it's just based on the limit that the applications that you have and the kind of events that they produce. And what was the first part of the question, Lou?
It says in background, which will monitor listeners.
Okay, so we have systems in the background, systems that run on our cloud infrastructure that will constantly monitor if the application is producing any events. And the moment it produces events, it's delivered to your control room in real time.
Steven's questions just came through. It made me chuckle. So, Vineet, while we're going through this, can you pull documentation links so we can share with everyone on the chat? And then Jose asked, is there an audit log about the received requests?
Absolutely, there is audit log about the received request. There's also a log about if a bot or an API task is deployed because an event arrived. And we also log all of the event payload data on that audit log request.
Can you attach more than one trigger to the same bot? Why or why not?
You can indeed. You can indeed. You can have multiple triggers implemented within your automations to be able to then set these off as each one comes. You may be, but with this, you need to be very careful because most triggers are going to be looking at one different exercise. And honestly, if you're starting to add multiple triggers to one single execution, you need to be thinking about the way that you're going to be developing this. Am I better off going down a modular approach where it's going to be one trigger per kind of what it's going to be doing? Or do I need multiple triggers in order to be able to actually accommodate everything that's happening there? So there's always going to be the case if you don't want one automation doing absolutely everything. You want the agentic first approach where you're starting to layer different kind of levels to the to your automation builds. And honestly, my recommendation would be keep it clean, have one trigger per automation, unless you do need multiple all doing the exact same thing.
Hey, Steven said, can my listeners listen to my listeners?
So if
Uh,
everybody listens, who talks?
yeah, if
Yeah,
you listen to your listeners listening, it may listen.
it'd be a very quiet room.
Yeah. Any additional license we need to buy for utilization of listeners?
Okay, so this is a little sophisticated. So if you're on cloud, you do not need any license to test web triggers and Universal Listener. The demo that Max showed today, you can actually implement a similar demo from any application and test it in your control room. Now, when you want to set this up in a production environment, like you're out of the bot editor, you create an event trigger record in the event trigger page. That is when you would need the enterprise license, which is one tier above our base platform license.
Perfect. Okay, so we're gonna ask some additional questions because we do have some come through, but I want to launch a poll question really quick because this is going to help us with roadmap features in the future. So where do you see Universal Listener fitting first in your workflows? Okay, I'm going to end in 3, 2, 1.
Lou, you went very still there. I thought I'd crashed. I was like, oh, where's the one?
Well, it was the poll, no responses were coming in, and then as soon as I started the countdown, it flooded with responses. So I was like, okay, I'll give everyone another house.
You're too kind.
All right, so this is what we're working with, event-driven automations, then monitoring internal application events. Not sure yet. So that is really good information. Vineet, Max, I do want to ask you, what are some additional use cases? So we sort of highlighted one in particular. We've brushed on a couple others, but based on what you've seen our customers use or ideate over, what are some that come to mind that this would be really beneficial for?
So Vineet sent me through an amazing one actually earlier on. Vineet, do you want to quickly touch on the fraud detection and instant account action?
Yeah, absolutely. Financial use cases are one of the most popular use cases where delivering information at the right time makes a lot of difference. So the scenario that we can talk today is about a fraud detection, system within a bank or any financial institution, which emits an event whenever a suspicious activity is detected. You know, unusually large withdrawal or rapid number of transactions or a mismatch in the location when a person withdraws money, wide geolocation differences. So these are all potential candidates for triggering suspicious activities or suspicious transactions. Yeah, so I think Max web triggers fit right in such scenarios.
They fit perfect there. I mean, the speed of the execution when something as important as this gets flagged up, it means it can be actioned instantly. So this just makes sure that, again, the security around everything and the response time for what's being generated through comes through as quickly as it needs to.
Absolutely, yeah. And based on that event, you can then write automations to potentially stop the fraud, like freeze the account temporarily, or send real-time notifications to your fraud analysis team.
Hmm.
And you can also trigger other workflows to verify customer identity and do some more logging internally. Yeah.
Yep, yep, definitely. I think that's I think that's a really good one, and it opens up the fact of like any incident really out there when you would need to make sure that it's actioned on extremely quickly is taken on. So let's say, for example, we're shipping products from one country to another. For this to be able to happen, we need to make sure that there are so many different types of documentation that is all being completed and sent into the user. Now, let's say we're now sending in food products into Australia, for example. We need all of our airway bills or the flightway bills and all of the other documentation. If there is any delay in this documentation for getting sorted or resolved, well, then that kind of freight container is going to be sat out at sea waiting until everything is confirmed before it can come into the waters. So even something like this, where it's a case of time is important, we can be monitoring all of the incoming emails, or we can be monitoring any of the communications that's going to be happening from point A to point B to then be able to trigger off the automation as soon as we receive the necessary files or the documents. So in terms of what we're saying, it's kind of anything with speed. You want to be executing straight away when you get that relevant data or that relevant information. This is probably one of the best ways in order to be able to do that and achieve it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Like anything that's time critical that needs to be measured in terms of seconds, web triggers are the way.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, we do have a lot of questions in the chat. So in a second, we're just going to dive into those because I have a couple of people asking if you can show something specific. So real quick, let me launch this poll. What type of use cases do you plan to enable with Universal Listener, or what is a use case you would like to hear more about? We can share this information with your point of contact, or Vineet and I can reach out and provide you with more information about specific use cases that will be beneficial to you in your role. We want to help you navigate this as much as possible. So let us know where you would plan to enable this, or what's something you'd like to hear more about in regards to types of use cases. IT service tickets is getting a lot of responses. Document updates, end-to-end process orchestration. So we have quite a few people just across the board. And then before I do any outreach, I need your thumbs up. So if you'd like to hear more about this from your CSM, from myself, from Vineet, please select yes in this question. Would you like that follow-up? If not, click no. Our feelings won't be hurt. We just want to support those of you who want to take the extra step, have a deeper conversation, find out more as it pertains to those use cases that you're most interested in or that would help you the most moving forward. So I'm going to leave this up for a few more seconds. And as that's up, let's see. Is there an issue with payload or connection? Will there be an error response to the source system, or is this something that will appear in the control room history?
Yeah, we definitely do not send any response back to the source system because that's producing the event. Assuming the event has been delivered to the control room, and if there's any problem deploying the automation, um, then we definitely log it in the control room. You will see a failed record in the audit log that will tell you why did the record fail? Did it not find a runner to run? Or you can also deploy API tasks and very shortly processes using web triggers. So the control room audit logs will tell you precisely why the deployment failed.
And then we had a question, can we have a quick demo on how to connect external events with webhook URL? I'm not sure if that's something you guys can do really quickly, but I'm creating this recording and doing the recap, and then I'm going to send it out to everyone on this call. Is that something, Vineet, you and I can sort of have a quick touch base on later? We can record that and share it along with this recap.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd also like to mention that the fastest way to test this out would be to try it using platforms like Jotforms or Typeforms, where you collect surveys from your customers. So just grab the listener URL from the control room and then paste it in the Typeform webhook section. And every time somebody submits a survey, like a user satisfaction survey, you can kickstart an automation in Automation Anywhere control room and act upon that survey.
And then just a couple in the Q&A, the triggered bot is queued, correct?
Yeah, if it's assigned to run on a pool of devices, and if no device is available, it gets queued.
Okay. And then Nordine says, I'm a bit confused about the licensing part. Although the event triggers are available in the base package, you need an enterprise license to use it. Is that correct?
Okay, so it's like a freemium model. So as a developer, if you're building the automation in the bot editor, and you configure a listener using the Universal Listener package or any of the out-of-box packages, and then you create the event in your source application, the bot starts running as soon as the event is delivered to the control room, right? So the bot runs while you are in the bot editor. So that is free. You don't have to pay to test or to realize the value proposition of the feature. But when you want to, when you check in the bot to public repository, and then when you go ahead and add that bot in the event triggers page, that is when the license check kicks in, and that is when you need the enterprise license.
What about, have you tried this with Monday.com? They need verification of secret tokens. So how does the control room handle that, if so?
Yeah, absolutely. You can add additional headers in the Universal Listener. These headers can accept, you can validate the API key that you can configure the API key inside these headers. And then whatever Monday.com sends as part of the event payload, we can match both these header records. And only if there is a match, we will deploy the automation. Similarly, you can also do, signature matching, like SHA signature matching. The event payload comes in an encrypted format. Based on the signature that you select in the bot configuration, we decrypt it using that signature, and only then we know what is the exact content of the payload.
And just to quickly touch on exactly what Vineet was saying there, within your setup on your web triggers, we have the authentication headers section right here. Where here we can add the API keys or ones that are static. And then for the signature schema, this is where we can have the randomized signature that would get passed from point A to point B. So for your question there, everything is all configured within the actual trigger part here itself.
Yeah, thanks, Max. That's a great plug.
So Javier says, I'm still fuzzy about assigning web triggers to specific applications. To test it, I created a listener and it generated a random URL. How do I tell this listener to listen to a specific application?
Yeah, go ahead, Max.
No, I was just going to say this kind of differs between how you get this set up. So, for example, when I'm creating the IT ticket system, what I've actually gone and done is created an edge function within my Supabase database itself with the event listener in there to be able to add that hook in play. But if you're then going to be setting this up with different providers, then that URL or a slight piece of code would be put in a different area. Honestly, something like this, because it does differ kind of from part to part in the way that you're wanting to get this set up, it depends on where you're wanting to actually get this configured. Vineet, I don't know if you have any kind of thing to add to this, but my thinking as well would be this would be a great topic to be able to add into the Automation Anywhere University as kind of a bit of a learning segment to be able to go through the different ways of configuring and setting these up.
Yeah, and we actually have a short course in the university, uh, for which I think Vatsal has kindly pasted a link to. So if you go through that link, that covers how to set up a universal listener with, I believe, Typeform. So one less thing as an action item for us, Lou. So this is the link that I
Yes.
planned to share. But yeah, thanks, Vatsal.
All right. Is the idea that a single run of your trigger bot would process a single inbound record? So each new employee created in an HR system would launch a single run of the trigger bot? If so, does that mean you need to schedule a bunch of trigger bots to sit out there ahead of time and wait for the inbound messages, which could come at random times and potentially large volumes all at once?
Well, this sort of goes down to how you actually go forward and build your automation. If you know you're going to be onboarding lots of new people and that's all coming in, then you can build your automation with a loop to go through each one by one as that first request ends up coming in. Likewise, if you create it in single ones and it's kind of scheduled out throughout the day, that listener doesn't just turn itself off once it's already gone and executed. So that will just then keep triggering that automation every single time you need to go and do it. And well, if you don't want to be allocating the bot runner to that single one, then you can leverage API tasks in order to be able to set up these triggers to perform the actions that you want it to run on the cloud. So with this, it all goes down to the way that you're wanting to develop and handle that process.
Okay.
Absolutely. And to just add on, um, the listener keeps listening to every new record that comes in. You don't have to schedule it again and again. You just add it once in the event triggers page, and irrespective of how many employee records get created, every record comes in as an event, and you will see so many deployments. But one of the best practices to implement in such a scenario is, if you are expecting a lot of records in a limited number of time, I think it makes sense to use the batch processing
Mhm.
instead of using webhooks, right? If you're expecting a lot of guests in at 10 a.m., you might as well keep the door open so that everybody comes in, rather than everybody of them, everyone clicking the bell every time and you opening it. I love your analogy, Max, so I'm using it.
I'm glad. I was literally just thinking. I'm really glad that analogy kind of clicked on here because that's one that I'm proud of, and it just resonates. It just ticks the boxes, I think, and that's exactly what
Yeah,
these webhooks are doing.
yeah.
Okay, so we want to understand more about adding webhook in monday.com because the first step in monday.com to add the webhook itself, they need the verification that we talked about earlier. So how would we go about doing that?
I haven't looked at monday.com, but if I'm assuming the verification will be in the form of either a header that monday.com will present something in the response headers which we need to validate against before deploying the bot. If that's the case, then you can do it right away today. If the monday.com is also encrypting the event payload, you can select the decryption algorithm in the configuration like Max showed earlier. We are also expanding the kind of encryption algorithms that you can support going forward very soon. I think in next month you will see. Right now you just have SHA 256, but next month you will see tens of other encryption algorithms.
They said the Monday verification needs post API call with secret token.
Absolutely. So grab the listener URL from control room, configure it in your monday.com. Monday.com will ensure that it will do a post call when it calls this callback URL, right? And then when the event gets delivered to the control room, you just configure the secret key as a header in your configuration.
Matthew asks, how do you migrate the bot and listener from a lower environment to the production environment? Does the listener need to be manually recreated in the prod control room?
Yeah, great question. Right now, yes. Only thing that you need to create in the production control room is the listener. And as Max showed, it's just 2 clicks, right? You click on the plus, you give a name to your listener and a description, and the moment you click create, the URL is automatically generated for you. And once that's done, when you've migrated your bot from dev environment to a production environment, you would have to go to your bot, open the bot, and then select the URL from the drop down there in the production environment.
Right. Jane asks, can I just clarify, for event trigger bots to run once created, we add them in the public area within event triggers under the manage menu rather than the scheduled area?
That is right. That is right. Yeah, we don't add them in the schedule area. Scheduled area is only for automations that you want to schedule. They trigger based on a time and not on an event that occurs externally.
For Monday, it won't get added as a webhook in Monday without verification. Vineet, would you try and share it with us in Q&A section of this blog session? Yes. And if you also want to send us an email, we can hop on a call and walk through this with you, anything like that. So I'll also drop the community email into the chat. So if you have any questions, you want to hop on a call, anything like that, we can do that as well.
Yeah, I'm making note of testing the Universal Listener with Monday.com for sure, because this question has come quite a few times.
All right. I've added that. Vatsy added a walkthrough demo on Universal Web Triggers training in AAU to the chat. So if you guys want to snag that, you can. Ooh, any additional questions? I don't see anything else coming through. So I do want to open it up for last call. How to promote this across environments? How do you promote this across environments?
So as Vineet says, this is kind of what we covered earlier on. Once you then migrate the automation that you've got there with that trigger over from environment A to environment B, it's just a case of reconfiguring that listener like we showed you in the demo. So just pressing that plus, creating that new listener URL, and then configuring that new listener URL within your production environment.
Awesome. Thanks, Max. Well, with that, I don't see any other questions coming through. So for everyone on the call, one, I will be pulling 3 names to send swag to, and in the recap email that I send out, I will share those names so we can celebrate them together. Let's see. The person who's been asking about Monday said, "Thanks, guys. I'm a Monday guy." So I'm more of a Friday person myself, but
I'm with you there, Lou.
I'll send out that recap. We'll choose swag winners, and yeah, I think that's it. If you have any questions, the community email is in the chat. I will send them to Vineet or Max, and we will get you what you need. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate your engagement, your enthusiasm, and we can't wait to keep working with you and answering your questions. So we will see you in the community, and thanks everyone. We'll talk to you later. The chat's blowing up. We really appreciate it. You guys are the sweetest.
Thanks all.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye.